God bless everybody. Today it is February 1st of 2023. This is a update on the paradigm of the three modern day kings, which is what I call it because it involves three kings or leaders of today. Those leaders are Reuben Rivlin. Isaac Herzog would be the second leader of Israel. Reuben Rivlin is the ex-leader or the past leader. Isaac Herzog was brought in 2021. And the third other king that we can relate to here would be Nebuchadnezzar or Erdogan of Turkey. And so I've tried to show you how this paradigm works and how these three kings match in the past. The kings when Daniel and the prophets were on the ground. These leaders of today have been in the same time that the leaders of those times were in place. And so if you look at those leaders, if you looked at Isaac Herzog, which would be Jehoiakim, if you look at Reuben Rivlin, which would be Zedekiah, and you look at Erdogan, which would be Nebuchadnezzar, if you look at the time that are indicated in these different verses that I give you, they line up with the leaders that have been in there today and the length of time that they've been in office based on the time that these kings were in the past. And so they match up. And so I've tried to show this paradigm to you. I've added an update to this area because when I realized we get into Daniel 10, it talks about this potential war with Persia that's coming up. And I keep saying that if you look at Daniel 8, it indicates clearly that once the Kurds or the Medes align with Persia or Iran, that we would see the king of Greece or Turkey come over and crush both these nations. And then we would have a completion of Daniel 8. And that would then move into a forming of Ezekiel 38 and 39, because once Iran falls, if you go to Ezekiel 38, 39, Iran is one of the first countries absorbed into this 10-nation caliphate of radical Muslims that will end up in Israel by the end of, I believe, 23. On my paradigm, it indicates October. So if you go to the paradigm, and I'll show you how to find it. So my website is at endofdayssurvival.com. This is a free Wix site. I sell nothing but information and basically try to break scripture down so it's relevant to what we see happening in current times. If you move down this page, go to endofdayssurvival.com, move down this page, you're going to see 4 PDF files. This has my huge chart that's a 117-step calendar. This has Nebuchadnezzar's statue and how it breaks down. This breaks down the chapters of 2, 7, and 8 and how they turn into the beast kingdom and how these all relate to each other. And this fourth chart, which is the paradigm, which I just updated today, will show you the paradigm itself, and it will go through the timeline of what's coming up in the next, at this point, about 1,704 days to the Feast of Trumpets of 27. So let's look at this, and I'll show you what I've added or modified on the paradigm itself real quick. So we've gone through a number of events, starting with Erdogan's invasion, where he sets up his 30-mile buffer zone in Syria and Iraq. And this started a chain of events which led to the COVID breakout. So I believe, in my personal opinion, and there's very few, if anybody else that believes this, that Erdogan is the white horseman. This horseman rider is not Antichrist. He's not Jesus, or he's not a history lesson. Because when you go to Revelation 4:1 and John is taken up to heaven, it clearly states that at that point this is a latter day event and it would happen at the end of time. And so if a lot of people want to radiate this as a history lesson, or it's Antichrist, when Antichrist comes up on the sixth trumpet, that can't happen. And if you look at Revelation 8:1 and 2, the seven seals break first. Then you have the trumpet phase. And then you have a bowl phase, okay, at the end here. And so you need to understand the procession of events. And so when somebody tells you that the seals break in the trumpets or the bowl phase, then you need to take them to Revelation 8:1 and 2, and it clearly tells them that all seven seals are broken first. You have a half an hour of silence, and then they hand out the trumpets and they blow those, and then after that we see a bowl phase, or the wrath of God phase. So if we blow this up or move into this section, I want to be able to show you what I've modified here. So hopefully I can do this with, hopefully I can do this without too much issue. And I am in a different screen, so I've got to set this up real quick. So now I've got this to a position where you can actually see this area between Daniel 8 and the start of Ezekiel 38 and 39. I wanted to show you this area, and the start of June 30th of 2021 is the start of those 2300 days that I have on the chart, which takes you to basically the Feast of Tabernacles in 27. There's a transition here that most aren't seeing, and no one is talking about this, and that is Daniel 8 transitions to Ezekiel 38 and 39. Because Iran has to fall first, and then that is absorbed into Ezekiel 38 and 39. And that ends up in Israel, and those 10 nations are destroyed. I believe on the sixth seal, because if Erdogan is the white horseman, he will be destroyed by the wrath of Lamb in Revelation 6:16. That will then move us into a trumpet phase, and we would see Antichrist rise on the sixth trumpet as you move down the line here. So, and he would sign the treaty of death and different things with the nations. So, and he would rise on the sixth trumpet here. So he can't be the white horseman. And the Lord comes back on the seventh trumpet. If you look at how I lay out the book of Revelation and the 22 chapters, you cut those three visions out, it makes a chronological order. And I've done different studies about that. But in this study, I wanted to show you what I've adjusted and how this seems to be occurring at this very moment. So, a few months ago, I had made a video that in Daniel 10, we wanted to watch something extremely interesting that is going on here. Daniel is distraught for 3 weeks. He clearly indicates. Let's go to Daniel 10. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So in Daniel 10, Daniel is distraught for 3 weeks or 21 days. He's mourning. He eats no flesh. He has no bread. He drinks no wine. He's basically fasting, and he's basically totally distraught. He is mourning. He's not sure what's going on, but he knows something's happening. Now, I've speculated that Daniel would know what was happening on the ground in Iran and around the surrounding areas, because he is fairly high up in the hierarchy of this government, since he's been through 4 kings at this point, and he is with Cyrus at this moment, and Cyrus understands that he is a prophet of the true God. And so when you look at this, he says that he's mourning for 3 weeks, and then on the 24th day of the first month, he's standing by this river Hedekiel, which is the Tigris, which empties down by the Euphrates. They have like branches off, and you have these different areas of the Euphrates and the Tigris. They all dump out around between Baghdad, Iraq, and Shush, Iran. And that's where this prophecy talks about. Even Daniel 8 talks about this same area. And so that's why I keep pushing you back to Daniel 8, because you need to understand that they are talking about the same thing here. That for 24 days he is mourning. And so when the 24th day happens, he has this vision. This vision comes to him, and he clearly sees that in the vision, based on what has been told to him, that Persia has withstood him for 21 days, and then he would send Michael against this nation called Persia or Iran, and then after that, the king of Greece would come after that. And so just realize that when you walk through this prophecy, and here's the part about the king of Greece, and so I've speculated that we would see an attack by Hamas or Israel that would counter each other back and forth. This would escalate quite to a fairly heavy level, and then what we would see is we would see an invasion by Turkey that would start to drive the Kurds southeast. If Erbil collapses, that will all then get pushed down. These people, these refugees, all these groups would then get pushed down between Baghdad and Shush, Iran, and when they align, the Kurds, the Medes, align with Persia or Iran, it indicates that then the king of Greece or Turkey, and we talked about that transition from Greece to Constantinople, Turkey, and how the Roman Empire was moved and different things like that. The Greece would come after that. So when you go to the paradigm, it shows you how this transition's happening. Now, if we come back to the paradigm, we've gone through the January 3rd, and what happened there was we saw a major escalation on the Temple Mount and between the Palestinians, Hamas, Hezbollah, and all these groups. And this has continued through the 24th to today. And what I've been talking about is if you look at those dates and you know what season you're in and you look at the paradigm and how I've laid it out here, it falls directly in line with where we are today. And that on the 3rd, this would start a chain of events that after 21 days, Daniel is seeing this vision that would then escalate shortly after the 24th or 21 days after the 3rd. And then in this vision, Daniel is told that Iran and Persia has been Iran's withstood him for 21 days up to that point. But now he would send Archangel Michael against Iran, and then he would send the king of Greece or Turkey against them next. So after the 24th, I speculated because, well, Archangel Michael's going against this nation, that this would be a fairly quick process, but I don't know how fast this will happen. And Turkey has to invade, and so what I'm waiting for right now is Turkey's invasion into Iraq and Syria. Now, we just saw overnight that Iran has launched a 8-missile attack against the Turkish base in Iraq, and so this is going to escalate this, and Turkey's not going to stand down. He's going to retaliate in one shape or form. This will probably ramp up his time on his land invasion through Operation Claw Sword, and so I'm expecting this to happen fairly soon. Now, I can't give you a time on after the 24th how fast this is going to happen. It doesn't give me that kind of information. The only thing I have after that is that we potentially will see a siege on Jerusalem by October 10th of 23 based on the paradigm and these scriptures that I have up here. Each of these areas have scriptures attached, and I've attached the Daniel 10 scriptures up here so you can see that interchange and how this works with Daniel 8 also. And we need to be watching those Kurds, because once Turkey does invade, their main goal is to not only clear out the terrorists of different factions and different groups out of Syria and Iraq, but it is to drive the Kurds away from their southern border. Since they're going to control Syria and Iraq, this is going to collapse to the southeast, and as the prophecy of Daniel 8 indicates, we would see this collapse occur. This would bring this group of Medes or Kurds down into the area between Baghdad and Shush, and once this happens, they would either attack or align with Iran. Now, if you go back in history, they were going to attack Iran originally. The Kurds were going to attack them, but they realized that Turkey or the Babylonians were breathing down their necks, and so they figured that if they joined forces, they could take Turkey out. But as the prophecy indicates, this turns out bad for both the Kurds and Iran falls as a nation. They're crushed by the goat. Now, this transition of them being smashed or destroyed, Iran then would be absorbed into that nation of Ezekiel 38 and 39, that we would see 10 full nations start to be compiled that would end up in Israel. First, they're going to go through Egypt and then into Israel. And based on the paradigm I've indicated on these verses, we would see this siege of Jerusalem occur around October 10th of 23. If that is to occur, based on how God works in all the other times that he's went against the nation in judgment, we see a locust and famine and plague event start to happen first. And so I've indicated that we would start to see this nation of Israel devastated by all kinds of plagues and different things. And I just indicated in one article in one of my past videos that they were being decimated by a number of different diseases on their crops. And so I believe this is going to ramp up, and we're going to see this affect Israel to the point where by the time we get to October, they're going to start to struggle on the ground with food and other things. And they're also being attacked potentially already by Turkey and these nations, because just because they're being besieged in Jerusalem by October, they're already being attacked, because to get to Egypt, they have to go through Jordan and Israel to get to Egypt first, and then he brings them back and leaves a sixth of those armies back in Egypt. So they're going to be affected by not only Joel 1, the plagues and famines and pestilence, but then by Joel 2, which is the sword of Gog. Now, a lot of people want to indicate that Joel 2 is part of Armageddon, but that isn't the case. If you look at Joel 2 and you look at Joel 3, there is a distinction between the two. Joel 2 is talking about the attack on Israel and how it's being basically destroyed, ravaged, and all the treasure is being manipulated, taken away, and all these people in the area of Israel and Jerusalem are being removed into captivity, and a third are being hidden, because 2/3 of the Jews die in this judgment. So this is going to be horrific for the Jews as we move forward. And I keep telling you that if we start to see this event of Turkey crushing both these nations, then this paradigm possibly is right. And then we need to watch this potential event of the sixth seal breaking in October, which would be a global nightmare of all kinds of chain of events occurring. If you look at Revelation 6, I believe 12 through 16, it indicates all the different things that are happening there. And so just be aware that if this war with Iran happens with Turkey, and you see Iran fall as a nation, once the Kurds align and join with them, then my speculation is that by October of this year, we will see a global catastrophe that will affect everybody on the planet, and that is where I am concerned next, and that would be what I would be looking at if this first portion of this prophecy plays out in the next month or two. Because I look at it this way. If you look at the paradigm as I've laid it out, so if you look at the paradigm and how I've laid it out, I work off of Psalm 90:10 and the strong generation of Israel, which would end in May 14th of 2028. And so we have to look at the fall feasts prior to that, which are the Feast of Trumpets through Tabernacles. If you take the furthest date out from the Feast of Tabernacles and work 2,300 days, that's where I get to June 30. And we started into these areas of it. We're starting to see intensification of war and different things like that. We're starting to see the Middle East unravel. We're starting to see all kinds of different things break out because we're in the sorrows and the birth pains right now. Okay? The sorrows and birth pains run to the signing of the treaty of death with the nations, that 7-year pact with the nations. And that tribulation would run 1,260 days to abomination, and then at that moment you would start great tribulation. So you need to understand the demarcations between these different areas. A lot of people don't understand that we're not in tribulation yet. We're in the sorrows and birth pains. You don't make it to tribulation until we have a signing of a treaty with all the nations that signed the pact with Antichrist himself. And so tribulation doesn't start until Antichrist is already on the ground and he's doing this actual signing with the nations themselves. So we're still in the sorrows and birth pains. We're about in this area here, and we're going to start move into the sixth seal event here. Once that sixth seal occurs, we have the half an hour of silence. You have burials for 7 months because Ezekiel 38 and 39 indicates that all nations go against Israel will be destroyed. You have a potential cleansing of the Temple Mount and the area that the third temple is going to be rebuilt when Antichrist is on the ground. And then we would start in the trumpet phase. And once the sixth trumpet happens, Antichrist and the false prophet rise. We would see them stop the continual burnt offerings. That's the 1,290 days, 30 days prior to the signing of the treaty, 1,260 days after that. Abomination of desolation occurs. He shortens the second half to 1,335 days. So you take the 1,335 days, which is the 1,260 days, you add 75 days to that. That takes you to the Feast of Trumpets, which only makes sense because that would when the seventh trumpet would blow. And on October 2nd, and I can't give you a date for sure or any of that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just showing you how this all lines up. That on October 2nd of 27, that is a sabbatical Saturday, and the temple would be open on that specific date. It can only be open on 2 dates, a new moon and a sabbatical Saturday. And so he shortens the second half. He tells everybody that he shortens the second half, but they don't listen to what he says. And they say, well, it's tribulation 7 years. No, it's not. It's 1,335 days, and then we're removed because he says that if he doesn't shorten it, his elect won't survive. So we need to understand that he shortens it for a reason, but no one ever talks about the shortening of the second half. Why does he give you 1,335 days? He doesn't give you these dates for no reason. He tells you this for a specific reason and purpose. And so the 1,335 days is from the signing of the treaty to the time that the elect are removed, which would be the rapture event, and all people are removed at that point, dead, alive, in the ground, and above the ground. All people are removed at that point, and then we have a bowl phase right after that. So realize what's going on here. watch these dates of January 24th as we move forward here, because we just had this attack from Iran on a Turkish base, and this is going to amplify what's going on out here and how Turkey's going to retaliate here soon. They're not going to stand down on this, and they're going to invade. Turkey's told us for months now that he's going to invade when he feels he's ready. He's been doing a lot to get ready, and I believe he's positioned at this moment to invade. And so I believe that we're going to see that fairly soon, especially now that he's being attacked on his borders. Okay, and so let's see how this turns out. Keep your eye on this situation because it is evolving fairly quickly. I will keep updating my videos so that you can see how this is playing out. But do realize that Daniel 8 will occur first. This will then morph into Ezekiel 38 and 39. Once these 10 nations are destroyed, this will then turn into a residue around Jerusalem that turn into 4 regions. And if you go to Daniel 7, it clearly tells you 10 nations form first. Then after them, 4 regions. And from one of those regions, a little horde called Antichrist will come from those 4 regions and overthrow 3 other areas. And that's what he's talking about. It goes from 10 nations which are destroyed down to 4 regions, or a residue of those 10 regions, reduced to 4, just as it was in Alexander the Great's time. This will be reduced, and from those 4 regions they'll have a power struggle that will then come an Antichrist figure that rises on the 6th trumpet, because Satan is thrown out of heaven on the 5th trumpet. Then we start that time of the 1260 days as we move forward, because he starts to gain his power, and that treaty will be signed, and it indicates clearly that he only has a short period of time of 3.5 years, 42 months, or 1260 days of power before desolation occurs. And then we see the 2 witnesses perish, and he clearly tells you that when those 2 witnesses perish and they've lied in the street for 3.5 days and they rise, that you need to not grab anything and run to the mountains, because he's going to end the story. And that's what I said. He shortens that second half, because at that point, even the 2 witnesses have been overcome. The elect are being beheaded and perishing, and there won't be any of these people left unless he does something about it, and he removes them by the Feast of Trumpets when he comes back, I believe, on October 2nd of 27. So keep your eye on this. I wanted to update the paradigm. I wanted to add this. These areas that I brought up in here, I've tried to make this to where I have not adjusted the biblical scripture and have left it in how he's presented it. Daniel's distraught on January 3rd. For 21 days he can't eat. On the 24th, we started to see this ramp up of events. We've now seen an attack from Iran on Turkey. It's February 1st. This is going to break out fairly soon, and we're going to see destruction of Iran once the Kurds join and you see Turkey invade. They're going to push those Kurds down. You're going to see this alignment of these 2 nations, and you're going to see a destruction of Iran that will be absorbed into an Ezekiel 38-39 event, and that will end on the 6th seal, and that will take us into an Antichrist phase, into the trumpets. God bless everybody. Find the open door. Find Jesus. He's the only way to get through this nightmare. Jesus, God, is in control of everything. He has shown you a map. He has shown you how this is going to be laid out, and he's given you scripture to follow. Don't take my word for this. Go out and study this, and go out and study current events, and tell me if this isn't lining up. as I've been telling you, I believe it has been and will for about the last 5 years or so. God bless everybody. Have a great night.